Thank you. All right. Well, I'm going to ask my panelists to introduce themselves in a quick second. What I want to do, all right, we've got their information up there first. I wanted to make sure we had that. So Jeff, take it away.
Sure, I'm Jeff Green, the CEO and founder of the Trade Desk buy-side platform for advertisers focused on streaming.
Hello, I'm Carrie Marshall, and I lead the media organization at T-Mobile.
John Halley, I'm president of Paramount Advertising.
So we're about to talk about a really important trend, a hot trend in the business with regard to connected TV. And before I get into it, I just want to cue up some data that gives you a sense of the growth in this space. As you can see here, this is an ad spending forecast, and as Malik was talking about the hockey stick, you're seeing that this business is very much a hockey stick. If you could, I think there's another also slide, which, by the way, if you want data like this, I encourage you to look over at the back. Our Variety Intelligence Platform product is here and well represented. And as you can see here, just across a lot of very interesting companies, the growth is tremendous, and you are at the center of this. Talk about, from the Trade Desk perspective, the growth opportunity here, because you've been riding this for a while.
It has been a while. We had a company event in January of 2020 where I said at that event, I am much more concerned about the tidal wave of opportunity being too big than being too small, and us being underprepared to capture the opportunity than being overprepared or having overhired. Again, that was January 2020. Then a pandemic that I didn't think would be a very big deal became a very big deal, and everybody stayed home and streamed. And that tidal wave of opportunity doubled or tripled in size, and we did 7 years of change in 2 or 3 years, and that's just accelerated since then. It's really impossible to put words to how big the opportunity is. This is a secular shift that we've never seen in media history. I don't know that we'll ever see again in our lifetimes. Where just all consumers want to be streaming. It is a better way to stream, and that is led by consumers wanting on-demand television, but also the peak of content. We are in the golden era of content. Like we can't go to a dinner party and not leave with 7 assignments of things you're supposed to watch, and that is something we've never had in our lifetimes. And in order to keep that going, we have to do our jobs really well.
From the T-Mobile perspective, how are you guys looking at CTV?
I agree with everything that Jeff said, but it makes it challenging, right? We're at the still infancy stages, and now we have scale of inventory, which before we didn't have scale, so people were like maybe slower to move your dollars there. Now we have scale, but this stage is messy, right? There's the fragmentation issue causes consumer experiences not to be great. Managing our frequency becomes a challenge, and having visibility of what's performing well or not is difficult. And so we know we need to be there, and we are there, right? We follow the consumer eyeballs, but it raises a lot of conversation around what is the ROI, and you can't have that conversation until you actually understand the identity issue that we face.
We'll get into fragmentation in a second, but I wanted to get your Paramount perspective on this first.
Yeah, I mean, we're a multi-platform media company, right? We have obviously a big linear business and a big digital business. The thing that strikes me is, I look at those charts. If you look at the projections around CTV, long-form investment, long-form programming anticipated to go up about 5% per year over the next few years. That's a mid-single decline in linear investment. AVOD investment up 20%. I think it's the fastest growing media format over the near term, and so that dictates a lot of what of how we think about it and what we do. If you think about the scale and impact, I was looking at the Nielsen Gauge report. Streaming now represents 38% of the view time, right? Cable's 34%, broadcast television's 26%. Streaming represents the biggest share of consumer view time. It's bigger than either broadcast or cable. It surpassed cable, I think, in June. So, to the point about, we're at a moment here. If you think about the size of these sub-bases and the footprints, Netflix, 75 million domestic, Amazon approaching 70 million, Hulu 47 million. Each of these things is more than 2 times the footprint of any MVPD, right? This is not an understatement. We're not talking about a thing that's about to happen or a thing that's on the horizon. It's happening now. We live in it. We have a great hand at Paramount. Paramount Plus now stands at, we closed Q3 at 46 million subs. We had an amazing Q4. When we report those year-end numbers, we're going to be north of 50 million subscribers, right? This is all happening right now. And so, we talk, the opportunity is upon us. It's going to continue into the future. It's going to impact all kinds of things, from programming choices to distribution partnerships to ad formats, right? It's single-handedly changing everything about the business.
That said, there are obviously challenges that go into, I almost get the image here of you guys are trying to, you're riding a tidal wave. I know you're here at CES introducing Galileo, this new program that helps in terms of leveraging first-party data. Talk a bit about how that tool helps navigate this tidal wave.
You bet. So let me just acknowledge just one other sort of elephant in the room, and that's that there is pressure on the consumer all around the world, including in the United States. There's also a lot of pressure on content owners, and there's a lot of pressure on advertisers. There's economic pressure. But that actually accelerates this particular opportunity. And it's actually pretty simple in the sense that when you go to consumers, and if you're in John's position or anybody else that has his position at a different network, and you're trying to get more subscribers, which they all are, this is a moment where if you ask consumers, would you rather see ads or pay more? Almost all of them are saying, show me the ads. So at a moment that advertisers are trying to do more with less, there's more opportunity to advertise. And so what is really important, we think, at this moment, is for advertisers like T-Mobile and so many like them to leverage their first-party data so that they can provide more personalized ads, which is the only way that this ecosystem and all the content keeps going at the rate that it has been. Where in order to give Paramount the high CPMs that they need, and in order to give the efficacy of ads that T-Mobile has, we have to use data to make very deliberate decisions. So Galileo starts with advertisers bringing their first-party data and us leveraging UID and a series of industry currencies and onboarding to make certain that you can leverage that data as beneficially as possible. What many people might not know is that the third-party data ecosystem that has been supporting the internet for the last 20 years has transformed, especially in 2022. Where everything used to be keyed off of cookies and things like that, and now almost everything is keyed off of email addresses leveraging currencies like UID2. So it makes it possible for Galileo to really transform things for advertisers who can trust a platform focused on the open internet and especially pointed at connected television. So very exciting announcement for us this week.
It sounds like good news for T-Mobile in terms of how they're using data.
Definitely, and I think the opportunity is there, but getting yourself prepared to take advantage of the opportunity is still in the early stages. Because of CTV and because of, first-party data is important, we need to redefine what our data strategy is internally. And, privacy has a seat at the table, the biggest seat at the table. And so we're navigating, making sure that our data structure internally is prepared to leverage CTV and what will be the driving force of hopefully all digital when it comes to identity, not just CTV. CTV should be the driving force to have better identity across the board.
From the Paramount perspective, is that cross-platform piece of it, I would imagine, super important?
It's incredibly important. If you think about the way that advertisers now have to activate in a world where traditional linear is shrinking, there's a really mixed use approach, right? Where you're kind of spending or supplementing TV buys now with social and short form and things of that nature. It becomes impossible to manage reach and frequency in a fragmented marketplace. Unified identity is critical for us as a content creator. Because if we don't solve the issue of fragmentation, we're going to live in a world where advertisers prioritize platform sales and prioritize the solving of fragmentation over all other things, including quality of content, attention, engagement, and the things that we're in the business of, right? And so we take, we're partnering obviously with the Trade Desk. The announcement came out this week on UUID 2.0. It's very important for us to tie these things together, give agencies and clients a view of the consumer across all of their environments. And it's a technically challenging thing. We spent a lot of time working on it. We've made enormous inroads, and from a product perspective, have gotten a lot better at activating on behalf of advertisers. But again, to echo the point earlier, unified identity, which is an understanding of where the consumer is, who this person here is the same as that person there, is critical to media activation in an era where mixed-use strategies are getting put into place.
I just want to underline what John just said, including that, when we announced the product Galileo, it means nothing without partnerships like the one that we have with Paramount on UID2. And the reason why we call it Galileo is think of it like the visualization of connecting the dots of constellations, where if I don't take the first-party data of companies like T-Mobile and make it usable on things like Paramount, we can't do our job as well as we could otherwise. And in an environment where you have to do more with less, you have to be very data-driven, and you have to control reach and frequency across multiple platforms, because almost every consumer's using multiple platforms. There is no way to justify the high CPMs that are required to power a company like Paramount and the efficacy of T-Mobile without connecting those dots. So it's just critically important. So as exciting as Galileo is, it's nothing without partnerships like we have with Paramount and so many others in UID2.
And those dots have to be connected in order to look at your ROI, right? It's one thing to make sure that there's a better, control over the buy. The quality control is a benefit and why you're doing it, and the consumer experience needs to be there. But also, unless you have that visibility, you don't actually know the ROI of your investment.
I also kind of want to add on to this, is Jeff's been pretty articulate about what's at stake here. It's not just about improving campaign performance. It's also about the future of an ecosystem where content is funded and developed. And if you think about what the risks are, you just look at China, actually, which had a fall off in investment in premium content. The advertisers have all kind of moved to social platforms there. The vast majority of advertising is performance-based in China, right? They don't have a sort of like brand-based product there to the extent we do here. And that is a problem for marketers, right? And we have to think about this across the entire chain of attention, awareness, and branding. It's not just about like the here and now and how we make individual campaigns work better. It's about the future of content, engagement, attention, et cetera.
Well said.
Jeff, you've got, Paramount among a lot of other very impressive partners, but you don't have everybody. We're going to have Jeremy Gorman from Netflix on this stage next, for instance. Maybe I could broker something. I'll take a commission, though.
We were just talking backstage.
Yeah, so how important is it? Doesn't everyone need to be swimming in the same direction?
Yeah, I do think it in order to get the best out of it, everyone has to be swimming in the same direction. But honestly, Netflix has more to lose by not being a part of the open internet than the open internet has to gain by Netflix joining. So in other words, they need the open internet more than the open internet needs them. But we all need each other. So one of the things that is just fantastic for both advertisers and consumers is that connected television is perfectly fragmented. It's not so fragmented that you need millions of people to coordinate the way you do on the web. And as there's lots of antitrust investigation into Google, it's largely because of how fragmented the internet is and how much power that wields when you have so many constituents that have so little power. But in CTV, you have the right amount of concentration where nobody has enough power to be draconian and to go it alone. But you also have so few players that everyone can be rational, and there needs to be an open market. So I think I predict great things for Netflix because of the market dynamics, the moment that they've entered, and the appetite that consumers have for a great ad experience. And I also think that they understand the dynamics and they're thinking about it the right way.
We're throwing a lot of buzzwords around here. One that I don't think I've heard yet in this conversation, though, is measurement. What do you think, is CTV now poised to be properly measured? I know for everyone here that's important.
It is important, and I think that it should be, right? You think about, our current digital landscape more in the display world or, in programmatic, and the opportunity to measure is high, right? And the capabilities are there. And so you think, oh, now you have CTV, it's digital. Why can't you do the same? Why can't you have holdout groups? Why can't you look at incrementality? Why can't you do, it should be, it's not there. But I think that, with identity, we're not going to be able to, or we don't want to measure based off of cookies, right? And that's where we are today in a lot of places. So I think that figuring out the identity first that will allow for improved measurement, but the measurement piece has to come second.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Unified identifiers are critical to the measurement question. When we look forward to a new era of measurement, that is fast upon us. The Nielsen sample is going to be retired in the next year and a half. There are going to be a host of new measurement products from companies like iSpot and VideoAmp and Samba, who have traditionally provided planning service, database planning services to the agency side. They're expanding those investments and trying to become the measurement companies of the future. They're doing so with big data sets. They're doing so with a lot of agility and capability that will bring a lot more kind of, I'd say, fidelity into the mix here, and an understanding, again, of unified identity. This is a major change, and it is the next stage, really. It's the next chapter in connected TV. It is about measurement. It is about convergent measurement and understanding people across these multiple environments in which they live. The good news is that digital is a census-based product. You can know. I can tell you from my content management system. I can tell you from my server logs. There will be opportunities to aggregate that data and create products that produce very, very strong fidelity. When we combine that with identity architecture, eventually we will get there. We're going to get to where the vision is. It's going to take a moment. But the architecture and the data is in place to do so, unlike it ever was with linear television, which needed to be measured by sample out of necessity.
Right, and I think, you mentioned iSpot, so T-Mobile, we use them for measurement, but we also need more publishers to allow us to take the inventory for that measurement, right? It's the same thing on Unified ID. If you're not getting the full ecosystem, then you're still only creating another kind of pocket of an environment to look at performance or to look at your buy. So we've been, partnering with iSpot for quite some time and meeting with our publishers on the media side to get more of our advertising tagged for that measurement piece.
And this is the imperative for publishers. We have to be able to support whatever measurement formats are requested. And, look, it's not going to be an infinite number. We're going to be dealing with a handful of new currencies. But as publishers, the onus is on us to support the activation and measurement preferences of advertisers. And that means, we have to develop our product. We got to do a lot of work to do that. We're very, very focused on that at Paramount. And I think slowly but surely we're seeing others in our competitive set also turning their attention to this issue.
One thing I just want to add on the issue of measurement is that sometimes we get so focused on making things as good as they can be or improving the status quo that we sometimes lose sight of the big picture. So for the last 50 plus years in television, it's been mostly about broadcast, where you send content out, you make some phone calls and ask people what they watched, and that's the way we measure. And so when you compare that to what we can do in digital, what we can measure, we're already so far above what we were doing 10 years ago in TV measurement. So we all talk about it like there's a problem to solve, and there is. There's ways to be way better than what we have right now. But we're already so much better than we had before. In the same way that on-demand TV is just so much better than what the chief product officer at Netflix used to call the tyranny of the grid. It is just so much better what we have right now than what we've ever had in measurement. So just don't want to lose sight of like how far we've come, how optimistic I think we should all be about streaming, because television is the best it's ever been right now. It's just going to get better.
Well, and I think that it opens up the door for a lot more advertisers who maybe didn't buy the linear TV because it's, you know, the high out of pocket, that were focused on performance-based media to now consider CTV, right? Because it's a data-driven environment that they can buy programmatically and find their audiences.
Exactly.
So what is the upfront season going to be like? I mean, with all this change, I mean, and yet again, I almost feel like every year around this time, we're like, oh, this time everything's different, and I fall for it every single time. Am I finally gonna kick the football this time, to use the Peanuts metaphor of Lucy and the football? Like, will I finally kick the football this time?
I think this is the year where everything in television changes for even more than we've ever seen before. And part of that reason is because of the addressability. And part of it is because of the economic pressure that we're experiencing. I think you see two sort of poles of gravity. One is towards cheap reach, and that's mostly user-generated content. And then the other one is to premium content. And because almost all of that is 100% authenticated and has identity attached to it, you're going to see an even greater premium for those that have UID and unified identifiers attached to it, so that marketers can be more effective with that. In order to get the best out of digital, you cannot use a forward market that was created in 1962. Which is when the upfront started. The same year the video cassette was invented. Incidentally, the video cassette has evolved. The upfronts have not. So as a result, what everyone is asking companies like us for is to create a marketplace or a forward market where you can leverage all the data, that it looks more like a commodities market than it does in 1962 upfronts. And it's only because of how much data is involved, forecasting, the amount of commitments that it's taken the industry a lot of time to get here. But you cannot justify the CPMs required to power businesses like John's without a more sophisticated forward market. And it's because of that pressure and the economic pressure that I believe this is the year things start to change.
Well, and I think upfronts is no longer a season. It's no longer like a point in time. It's a 12-month thing. Like we talk about upfronts every week. Like we talk about video, right? And holistic video. We think about, user-generated content. We think about the premium content, but you think about video, which it changes, right? Capabilities change, new content is available, new distribution is available. So upfronts is no longer a season. It's a 12-month conversation. You might start transacting and having agreements made around the same time, but it's changed.
I would debate and maybe take the other side, because I think the upfronts have evolved significantly, particularly in the last 10 years. Increasing proportion, digital never used to trade in the upfront. It's now, almost half of the money that's getting agreed to. The terms around digital activation are negotiated in advance. We deal in a product, in a market of scarcity. Futures markets are very important in those kinds of marketplaces. What has changed, frankly, is the complexity of those upfront discussions. We're meeting with agencies this week and crafting, different kind of lines forward over the course of the next couple of months. That a lot of it has to do with technical questions, activation preferences, workflow changes. These are the kinds of things. The nature and character of the digital marketplace gets discussed and agreed to in an upfront marketplace. Now, to the point, yes, it's a 12-month. It is a 12-month process. But I'm on the other side of like there's no need for agreements in advance. You need to clear the brush on a lot of the technical specifications, your ways of doing business, by the way, which have multiplied significantly over the course of the last several years, and tie those to volume commitments that are made in advance. Yes, there are challenges with things like PMPs. You know, you don't know if the audience is going to surface. It's, you know, you sometimes can't meet that commitment. We have workarounds for that. But the business really has changed, and I just think about it just very, very simply in terms of what is the role of a futures marketplace with a product that, you know, whose defining characteristic is scarcity.
When I think about change in media of all kinds, the thing I typically gravitate to in my mind is whatever the biggest entity does, everyone else will follow. And I'm curious, and tell me if I'm getting this equation wrong here, I would imagine in this scenario, YouTube is sort of the big kahuna. Is there, you know, does the metaphor hold up? Is YouTube going to dictate what happens in this marketplace of CTV? Because they're also on TVs and...
I'm going to go with no for exactly the reason that John just stated. There is scarcity of premium content. There is not scarcity of anything on YouTube. Like, they're uploading like 90 gazillion hours a minute or whatever. There's almost unlimited supply inside of YouTube. And so what brands are looking for most is to know that they have attention, to know that they're associated with premium content, to know that the user isn't hovering, skip, and just annoyed by the ad, but expecting something very different. The ad experience in the premium world is just so different that, and the scarcity is so different that it's just not the same. The brand risk is massively different. So I don't believe YouTube is the leader or the kingpin in any way on this.
What he said.
Well, can't disagree with that. Well, look, I think this is going to be a really interesting year. I hope I'm not disappointed. I hope you come back next year and we're like, man, look at everything that changed. Finally. So thanks to all of you for this conversation.